started, that was dwindling down. The EC was up for renewal. And so we really thought hard about this and said, you know what, we don't want to push a tool out on the 2019 version when the 2023 version is coming. And of course, the 2023 version was about a year and a half late. So we kept waiting for it to come out. And so the decision was made to delay developing the tool until we got the new EC and had time to digest exactly what was going to be in that tool. And so that's why we've been delayed here. And then there's been a lot of back and forths, and so we are finally getting ready to roll this tool out. We are going to debut it. Well, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So let me tell you about the tool, and then we'll tell you next steps. So the elevator certificate guide here, this is the landing page. And so the goal, it's a welcome. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And then focusing on what the tool is for. And so then as you step through the tool, it's an online web-based tool. We don't have an app yet, but the goal is this website is being designed to be app friendly and phone friendly, with the idea that at some point in time we want an app. But for now, it's just going to be web-based. And so as you go through the selection process of your diagrams, it lands on a Find Your Diagram page. All your diagrams are here. And as you answer questions for the diagrams, the different options will be updated. So, and the logic of this has been challenging because I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been teaching the EC workshop for 12 years. And so in my brain, these questions just kind of happen. So with the web developer I'm using, who's the same web developer that ASFPM Foundation uses, he's forced me to actually pull myself out of my engineering brain and say, all right, what would a normal person who doesn't know the EC first ask? And so we had to go back and forth and rinse and repeat where we landed on this. So the first thing, is the building a slab on grade? We say yes, and some of the diagrams disappear. Now they fade out, so that based on your answer, these options are gone. And if you're positive that this is a diagram 2A, well, then something happened. Either the question you answered is wrong, or that you misunderstood what a diagram 2A is. Because the goal of this tool is to be a teaching tool and not just a black box. I don't want this to just be something where you spit in data and then data comes out and you haven't learned anything. So the goal of this is to force you to learn as you're answering these questions. So is it a slab on grade? Yes. Is it split level? No. And so as we go through there, of course, you see the diagram 3 and 4 disappeared because those are split levels. So as we walk through it, different options go away. Is the bottom exclusively parking, storage, and access? So this is our enclosure question. So we're asking, is the bottom an enclosure? And you say yes. Okay. Well, some of these that are still here may seem that they don't make sense. Why is the diagram 5 still there? Well, if I have a mobile home with a flexible skirting around the bottom, well, that may look like an enclosure to somebody. And so then if we go through that, we'll get to the point where we ask the diagram 5 question, is the skirting flexible? Yes. Okay, it's a diagram 5. So this forces us to kind of get out of our, think outside the box a little bit. And you may say, well, why is a diagram 1A still there? Well, if I say it's a 1, so is the bottom level parking, storage, and access only? And then I say it's 1 story. Well, 1A and a 1B are there. Because if I've got a detached garage, that bottom level is parking, storage, and access only. There's nothing above it. So it forces us that know these answers to think outside the box as well, to kind of break our standard muscle memory. Because a 1-story enclosure, it could be a 1A if it's a garage. So we're kind of stepping through that logic. Now, what if we say, instead of a 1-story, what if we say it's 2 stories? Well, now we have our 5, 6, and our 7. And it's going to ask us about the walls. Do we have facade walls? This is where the diagram 5 comes into play with the mobile home, manufactured homes. So we're going to walk through it. What kind of walls do we have here at the bottom level? And then we say, well, we've got foundation walls. And ta-da, we are a diagram 7. So we've landed on, after all those questions that have been answered, it's gotten us to the fact that this is a diagram 7. And then with that next spot. Hold on a second. Sorry, y'all. I'm going to, nope, I can't pause the sharing. I was going to try to switch this to presenter mode so I can see what's coming next, but we'll just deal with it. We'll navigate it. So with the crawl space, we've landed on that it's a diagram 7. We're good to go. And then we go to the diagram specifics. We proceed to more detail. Now that we've landed on which diagram it is, let's get in the weeds a little bit. So we're going to go now to the diagram specific information page. And then here we have more questions to answer. Now that we know it's a 7, let's ask another question. And so this question here, is there living space on the bottom level? Well, we've already answered that, right? Because we said it was parking, storage, and access. However, sometimes people forget that there's actually a bedroom down there. So this is a double check. So we're basically asking, are you sure there's not living space on the bottom level? And so we say, is there living space on the bottom level? And you say yes. Well, sorry. We also have these photo galleries. So the photo galleries here are to illustrate the different types of diagram 7s. And we're including random pictures. We're going to include a lot of illustrations from FEMA publications. We're still adding information here. But basically, if there's a FEMA publication out there on building diagrams, whether it's directly related or ancillary related, we're trying to get all of those pictures into the photo gallery so you can see what some real examples are, and then these standard FEMA drawings that you're used to seeing, how they all fit together. And so we're slowly building this up for all of these different diagrams to see, help you guide to the right diagram itself. And so then back to my other question, is there a living space on the bottom level? Like I said, we've already answered this question, but this is a double check. And so let's say you get here, you're on a diagram 7, and you think, well, yeah, there's living space. We got a bedroom down there. And you say yes. It flags you. It's like, hold up now. You told me there wasn't. So what you just told me contradicts something you told me before. Go back. So we've got a couple of these double checks scattered through it, because you know as well as I do, people are so used to grabbing certain things on these diagrams, and they make mistakes. For example, how many people say the air conditioner is the lowest machinery surface in the building? Always. They just grab the AC elevation and forget about the water heater or the furnace or anything. So we're trying to force the people who know the answer is right to say, are you sure? And try to catch them. Because once again, this is a training tool. It's not meant to be a black box that, we want to teach you how to fish. We don't want to give you a fish. And so from there, we go back and this error pops up. And so you're wrong. You have to go back and modify things. And so then we go back, and this screen actually highlights what question you got wrong or that contradicts it. So we want to highlight that. Of all of these, you said it was just parking, storage, and access. What's the problem? And so it forces you to walk through that question. So then when you check, we go back, you'll check no. All right. No, there's actually not living space on the bottom level. It is just an enclosure. Okay, now we can proceed with the relevant information. And so from here, we're going to say, are there flood openings on the exterior walls? And if you say no, then we're pretty much done, because we've got all the information we need. And then the diagram specific information pops up, and it summarizes the information for the building based on what you told me. Like, here's what you said. Based on this information, you need to also provide this additional documentation. And so we tell them, you've got to fill in sections A8, A through F, because you have an enclosure. So make sure all those are filled out. And in section D, we need these comments. And of course, A5 is always required, because you've always got to have a lat-long source per the instructions. And then the C2E machinery type and location is always required, because you've always got to tell me what that is. So it's a very simple conclusion here. Answer A8, A through F, and then A5 and C2E. But we also have other options. So let's say you, so it tells me the diagram specific information, clarifies that. And then let's say instead of saying no for flood openings, you said yes, there are flood openings. Okay. Well, now it asks you, are any engineered? So do we have engineered openings? And if you say no, well, then once again, the conclusion is the same as it was before, because we don't have to attach an engineering opening certification. Everything's still good to go. So we have the same comments, the same requirements for information in A8. But if you tell me, yes, there are engineered openings, well, now the summary conclusion changes. Because whereas before we're asking for A8, A5, and C2E, well, now we also need the Section D attachments box checked because you've got an attachment you've got to give me. And now you've got another comment for A8E, which is the engineered opening manufacturer and the model. And you've got to attach the engineered opening certification to the form. So it walks you through, based on what you said, I need more information, and this is what you have to attach. And once again, I keep trying to get ahead of myself because my brain's like, and this, and this, and this. So this is how it walks us through the conclusion here. And then once we get there, the next box would be, would you like to select some photos from this image gallery? So what we want to do too is we want to take these canned pictures that are part of the FEMA publications and the guidance documents, whether it's the EC instructions, FEMA's guidance on enclosures and parking garages, the insurance manual, all these illustrations that people are used to seeing, we want to put them in here, as well as a bunch of random pictures that I've found over the years, whether they come from FEMA or that I've taken in the real world, that show you, all right, are any of these pictures like your building? And if so, you can select them. So we're selecting a couple of these pictures. These are my diagrams. These are my real world pictures and my illustrations that correspond to my house. And then you also have the option of uploading an image. Would you like to upload an image of your specific building to this? So you've grabbed the canned pictures out of the photo gallery. Would you like to submit any of your pictures? So we've got both the examples and your real building. And if you do, then you can upload that picture and you select it and you can add it to this this report as well. So it allows you to, this is where you would add your pictures from that you're using in EC itself to show some more context. And we're doing this because a lot of times, once you upload your picture next to the example pictures, you say, wait, those are not the same thing. So we keep trying to force the person to learn as they're going through this process. Even if it's against their will, we're going to force you to learn. And so once these side-by-sides are here, so often I tell people, they'll say, what's a diagram 3? And I pull it up next to each other like, wait, that's not right. So we want to force everybody to get outside their box. And so from there, we've said, no, we're not going to actually upload a picture of the house. So we then go to our summary and conclusions page. And from here, it tells us everything we told it, plus all the conclusions. Based on the information you gave, based on what you told me, we qualify that very carefully. This is a diagram 7. We don't tell you it's a diagram 7. We clarify. Based on what you told me, it's a diagram 7. That way, when this conversation happens between the surveyor and the community official, you can clarify, well, this answer you gave was wrong, surveyor. Or the surveyor can say, community official, you're contradicting part of this information. Because the goal of this tool is not just to teach and to learn and help people learn about this process, but also to facilitate a conversation. If I can sit down as a surveyor or an engineer with my floodplain manager and say, all right, here's the tool, here's this information. I think that diagram 7, you keep saying it's a diagram 1B. How are we getting to the different conclusions? And this helps you walk through it because the community official can pull up the same tool, walk through the same questions. And if you get different answers, then it forces a conversation and a dialogue to understand the why. And so then we go through some conclusion information. Your building is on a slab and it has more than one story. So we're not saying, here's the question and here's your answer. We're giving more conversational and narrative conclusions based on the answers that were given. That way it forces the person to, when the text is written differently, people tend to read it instead of it being a copy paste of what you've said. They're like, oh, what does this say? Okay. So we're trying to force the person outside of the box checking, black box approach to a lot of this stuff and force them to reread it. So, you said the bottom level was enclosure and it's exclusively parking, storage, and access. And there's no living space on the bottom level. So that repetition of you said this, which means this. And then another conclusion, the walls are supporting the weight of the next higher floor. And that kind of steps into the, is this a diagram 6 that looks like a 7, or is it actually a diagram 7? And there's engineered flooding. So it goes through these conclusions of what the person told us. And then it also provides the comments as well. Here's what we told you. You got to fill out section A8. We need a checkbox, and it walks through all those different comments. Now, some people had asked, why don't you just let it generate an EC or generate what the EC should look like? We specifically chose not to do that because, once again, that's black box. I'm not going to tell you what the engineered opening manufacturer is. I'm not going to ask you to tell me it's a smart vent or a flood flap, and then I'll fill it in for you. I'm going to force you to understand what this means. You as a surveyor or engineer have to go, or architect have to go get this information and add it. So we wanted to make it completely not black box in versus out. People asked, well, why can't we add the flood map data here? Well, that involves making a tool that goes to the FEMA website and finds the flood map data and adds it in here. Once again, it takes away the education on the learning process. As a floodplain manager or surveyor, you should be able to go to the FEMA website or your flood maps or your state website or your local website and find the flood panel, the dates. All that information is something you should be able to do rather than clicking a button and it spits it out to you. And I've been teaching, like I said, the EC workshop for a dozen years now, and I'm constantly getting that input on, can we make this more automated? No, because as we've learned, the more automated stuff gets, the less we actually learn about it. And when we were working with the FEMA EC task force on what should the next version of the EC look like, the 2019 to 2023, we had so many floodplain managers from around the country submit comments that said, can you make section B automated? Can you make section B automated? And we kept saying no. And in the kindest way possible, do your job. I'm not going to figure out the flood map panel for you. That's part of your job. So anyway, there's different schools of thought of that, but as long as I'm in charge of making this app, it will be very educational, training focused, and not a black box that spits out any answers for you. So this is our conclusion page that lands on it. And then we have a disclaimer. And if you read this disclaimer, you may think, well, this is a little overboard. You may get, I don't know, when I was writing, I kind of get a chuckle when I was sharing it with Emily and the folks at GAFM. And basically this says, nothing in this tool should be used by anybody for any purpose whatsoever. This thing is horrible. I mean, we try to kind of imply that so that nobody took this for the gospel. Nobody took this as the ultimate authority, because this is a training tool and it's a guidance tool. It's not meant to replace the regulatory authority of the community. And so if this tool says something and the community disagrees, the community has the ultimate legal authority for enforcing floodplain management. So we don't want any surveyor to be able to fill this out and go to the community and say, well, this tool says you're wrong, I win. We wanted to force a conversation. So information in this document is only for informational purposes. It's based on what you told me, user. So everything's in here is based on what you told me, and it doesn't override anybody's authority, not FEMA, not the state, not the local, nobody. And this is full responsibility. And also, by the way, none of us who helped develop this tool, the foundation, GAFM, or Schwalls, takes any, we don't say anything in here is right. So basically, I qualified this to death so there could be no conclusion drawn from here that was inappropriate or inaccurate. At the end of the day, FEMA, the state, and the local municipality are the ultimate authority here. And then we get our, wait, sorry, that's the wrong, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, hold on. There were some updates here that did not go through. Let's do that one. Yeah, Terry Turner would be very mad at me if I didn't do that correctly. Let's see. So it then gives me the conclusion page. So it provides all the comments, the pictures, and then adds this legal disclaimer that the rest of this page is left blank. So we're working on some of the layouts. We're tweaking the layout a little bit here and there. my webmaster has told me, we're going to be tweaking and revising this. And he said, Dale, I know you want this to look perfect. He said, wait. He said, with the way that programming is done, I can force this to look perfect now, but as we add information and change information, then it gets derailed again. So don't get so caught up in like, can you put this, remainder of this page intentionally left blank higher up in the middle? He's like, don't worry about that. That's coming. But right now we're focusing on, does this look good in general? Is the formatting good? And the data. We got to get the data in here correct. So this is what we're going to generate this 2-page PDF that you can then attach to your file. You can submit it to the community. You can have a conversation. So this is your record of everything that the tool told you. And one thing that I really wanted is, this is a training tool. And as we go through it, I wanted you to be able to go back and forth and learn. And one of the most frustrating things about a website or a tool is that when you make a mistake and you need to go back, it starts over. And I told you, I was like, absolutely not. People are going to throw computers against walls if we make them start over every time they make a mistake. So the benefit of this too is once you click back, everything you've already told it is still there. It remembers everything. Now you can start over. That top left button, there's a button up there to start over to clean the data out. But everything you told it, it remembers, so you can go back and forth, and you never have to start over from scratch. You can just back up in the questions. And that was one of the big things. Like I said, I wanted this to be as painless as possible for the user to learn, because if it gets too complicated or people get frustrated, they quit and then they stop having a conversation. Now, next steps. What are we going to do next? Well, we got feedback from GAFM and ASFPM Foundation. So I went to the GAFM conference. I gave this presentation, got a lot of great feedback. That's what I said. Terry Turner's going to kill me if I don't fix that slide. So there are a couple things that Terry and Emily and some users that attended the conference that came to the presentation were giving me some input. And so got feedback from GAFM and ASFPM Foundation on some improvements. And then at ASFPM 2026 next month in Milwaukee, we're going to beta launch it. So I'm going to be at the ASFPM Foundation booth the first night at the exhibit hall, demonstrating the tool and letting our nationwide floodplain managers break this thing. Jump in here, find the errors, find the gaps, find the contradictions. Tell me what you don't like and tell me what you think is wrong so we can fix it. Because the goal here, like I said, is to break it, because we want it broken by the test users way before it gets rolled out in public. And so once we get the feedback from ASFPM next month, I was talking to Emily and the team earlier this week and last week, and we've been kind of wrestling back and forth. What are the next steps? What's the process here? Once I learn how bad the app is or the tool is at ASFPM, then we're going to make the decision about how quickly to, gamma test it, whatever the next one is after beta, gamma test it with the GAFM team. So we're not going to test it statewide. I don't need that many cooks in the kitchen, but we are going to identify, a couple dozen probably floodplain managers and consultants around the state of Georgia to help test this as well. Once I've fixed the low-hanging fruit from ASFPM. And then, so once it's refined, I want the GAFM team to really get in there and flip over the couches, lift up the rugs, find all the dirt, find all the problems, so we can really get this thing fixed and robust, so that we don't issue it. When we issue it, public launch in the fall, we want it to be as perfect as possible. Now, there's going to be problems, there's going to be gaps, things we need to fix. There's going to be recommendations for improvements, but I want to get it as street ready as possible by the end of the year. So the Georgia folks, Emily and the team and Michael Blakely and Tom McDonald, who've been working on this with me for several years, have been really anxious to get their hands on it and get it to you, but want to do this strategic and do it well so that we honor the investment of the time from everybody, all our volunteers, as well as the ASFPM Foundation grant. And then once this goes public, we are figuring out the branding of it. The ASFPM Foundation is going to be the host of it in some shape, form, or fashion. Even though GAFM was the ones who were the builders of this tool and the initiators of it, we didn't want to put this on the GAFM shoulders, because one of the key things from the foundation, ASFPM Foundation, is that in order to fund a project, it needs to be nationally applicable. And so we wanted this to become a national tool. So thus, a national association and foundation is going to be hosting it and have it out there for public consumption. And we also have some feedback tools that are going to be part of this as well, so that users, as they test it, they can actually jump in and provide feedback on improvements. All right, now it's poll time. Got to make sure we have a poll so we can get our credits. Who's launching our poll? Is it me?
No, I'm launching it.
Okay, good.
So please use the pop-up to answer the poll question. And if you don't see that, then you can check the chat for the poll function. The question is, what is the source of the funding for this project? National Science Foundation grant, Georgia DNR Resiliency Grant, ASFPM Foundation Grant, or Pew Charitable Trust Flood Prepared Communities. And I'll give about 1.5 minutes to answer the question.
Right. Yeah. We got I don't know, I just made up some of these. I don't even know if some of these exist. Does Georgia DNR have a resiliency grant? Not to let the cat out of the bag too much there.
Dale.
Yeah. Somebody said my name. Did I mess up? Whoever gives me a microphone, it's your fault. Yeah, I was teaching. I taught the AEC workshop at the Montana Floodplain Conference back in February, and they asked me to participate in one of their keynotes or whatever. And somebody said something, and they're like, "Well, you can't say that, Dale." I was like, "Well, you gave me the microphone. You knew what you were getting when you gave me the ability to say things."
All right, I'm going to close the poll up now. Okay, looks like we have 100% on ASFPM.
Which is the correct answer. So excellent. People are listening. Well, the ASFPM Foundation, I always like to remind people those are two different things. ASFPM and the foundation are two separate entities. All right.
Just for those who are online and the bot was disabled, so you are having to frantically type in, we'll accept ASFPM, just because I know that's a lot to type.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Indeed. Well, and so I appreciate the time. We're going to take some questions, of course, but here's my contact information if you need to reach out. But you can reach out to Emily and the team, of course. I'm excited about this tool. As I said, it's a long time coming, but we are finally getting there. So we're getting close to getting this on the street. So Emily, do we have any questions that have come in?
Well, I do have a question.
Okay.
You mentioned that at the end we get a summary of which fields to complete.
Mm-hmm.
Having worked for the state a long time, I say with much comfort, government people do not like blanks. People who have to review forms immediately see those blanks and they throw it back saying, you got to finish filling this thing out. How are we making sure that they understand, while they need to make sure those specific areas are filled out in connection with the correct or the best answer for the building, that they don't think, oh, that means skip this, skip that, skip the other thing.
Gotcha. Well, there is there's always a balance between covering every single item and focusing on the key technical pieces. And this is something Becca Freaky-Croft from Atkins, who is, I guess, the West Coast EC expert. Her and I, she always reminded me when we're redoing the EC instructions. She said, Dale, remember, we're not trying to incorporate a 6.5-hour training into the EC instructions. We're not teaching the EC in the instructions. That's for the workshops. And so with that, we can add conclusions to this that say, ensure all fields are complete, all relevant information is NA. But then as soon as we say something like that, there's a field that's supposed to be 0 versus NA, and somebody says, well, you told me to put NA. Or, section E, for example, which is related to zone AOs and zone A's without a BFE. If you're not using section E, you should leave it blank, because you wouldn't want to put NA there, because there are answers, we don't need them. And so saying fill in everything might translate to somebody thinking they have to fill out section H and I as well every single time. And so we could land on something where please ensure all fields in sections A, B, and C are complete. So it's a catch-all for that. But that's the kind of input and feedback and wrestling through the details that we want to have on this, so that we see the unintended consequences of that kind of guidance. So I say all that to say, very good point. We should add something in here to address that. We have to be careful of how one size fits all that guidance is. That make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Not to change your question into something you didn't ask, but
no, actually that addressed it perfectly. I do have another question about the selecting of pictures.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be able to cut and paste a picture of an example picture and throw it onto their EC. How are we making sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen, or can?
Well, I get that question, but all these example pictures are in the FEMA publications as well.
Sure.
And so if somebody wants to break the rules, they're going to find a way. But I get the concern, and I think that the disclaimer we have maybe addresses that a little bit. Well, we have a way to fall back on it. I mean, somebody, it's like, how do you stop somebody from taking the FEMA form and breaking it and adding a magic page 8 and 9 for extra pictures? Well, you tell them don't do it, and then they still do it. So I kind of land on the, we establish laws to keep good people doing the right thing. The criminals are going to break the laws regardless of what you say. So if somebody wants to shoehorn a inaccurate picture in here, they're going to find a way to do it.
All right. Very good. The chat is open for anyone who does have a question for Dell. If you think that your question is going to be a little bit long and trying to type it out, we can, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, we can take people off mic if you'll raise your hand. Is that right?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay.
And I can also, if there are no other questions, I can also pull up the tool and kind of walk through some of the other flow paths and all, but it's all the same. It's just more ooh and ah kind of information.
All right. If you can pull that up so we can actually see the tool live,
Okay.
or
Um,
close to live as possible.
Well, and as I say that, I'm trying to figure out how I do it without sharing the actual web link, because I don't want anybody in the app yet, and I'm not sure I can. I don't know how to screen share without. Let's see. Hey, we'll wait for more. We'll wait to see if there's any questions that have come in, because I see the chat's kind of asking a few. Nope. Let's see, hold on. Let me stop sharing this and see if I can actually get the. I know some people are like, well, why don't you just give us the web link? No, absolutely not.
You're not ready for us to go in there and break it yet?
Yeah, not quite, not quite. Let's see. And I know that there's dead air here, and so I hate it when there's dead air, but I'm going to try to, let's see if that works any better. Oh, wrong way. Okay. We're getting there. I'm almost there, folks. Bear with me. I'm redoing my screen alignment so I can do that. There we go. Okay, sweet. Where there's an engineer wheel, there's a way, huh? I can share this again. All right. So here's the tool. And as we go through, let me see, I'll make this larger. Figure out how my screen works. There we go. So we're going to, so we can start. Well, so start over here. You can, as I said, you can bounce around between the different areas and all. But like, for example, if we say, is this a raised slab on grade? And Emily, I'll count on y'all to keep an eye on the questions and chat to see if any random questions come in.
Okay.
But is this a slab on grade? Yes. Is it split level? Yes. Well, now we're diagram 3. So it automatically goes there because a 4 would have a basement. And so we play around with it. Is it split level construction? No. Is the bottom level habitable space? No. And so this is a little bit of Dell made up guidance that's in here. So there's really no rule of thumb between a 1A and a 1B. We don't have any guidance as to, other than a stem wall, a backfilled stem wall is a 1B. Now, how much grade difference between on a monolithic slab is a 1A versus a 1B. So I've added in my rule of thumb I use. A foot or more, it's a 1B. Less than that, it's a 1A kind of thing. And so some of this stuff is really the Dell made up kind of show. Here, let's go back to, is the building on a slab? No. Okay. Well, does it have a basement? Yes. Well, now we have our 2, 4, and 5. Is it split level? Yes. It's a 4. No. All right. Can I get into the basement from the outside? Yes. Okay. It's a 2B. No. It's a 2A. So it's dancing through those kind of questions. Does it have a basement? No. Does it have a crawl space? Why, yes, it does. Okay. Well, now you're, all these diagrams. Was it below grade on all sides? Yes. Okay. Well, it's a basement. Is it more than 5 feet? Well, yes, it is. Well, it's a 2A or a 2B. And so now we're back to that 2A versus 2B. Well, no, it's not more than 5 feet. All right. Well, let's see. Yes. Is it above grade? And so this kind of dances around your different questions and the logic. And with my web developer, we've been walking through the logic, and he keeps breaking my logic. And he's like, well, not everybody knows that thing that you think is in your brain. Everybody knows. So he's forcing me to find the gaps here. So then we land on a 7 versus an 8. So adding in these different qualifiers that FEMA has in the instructions. So you walk back through all these different questions here. And really trying to make it as logical as possible. No, yes, it's 2 stories. And is it a facade wall? Why, yes, it is. Okay, well then Is it a mobile home with flexible skirting? Yes. Oh, you're a 5. Is it rigid skirting? Oh, you're a 6. And so dancing around that kind of information to really try to make it as fluid as possible with these questions. And like I said, you can always jump between the two different things. Is there a garage? We answer that question. And so you can bounce around between these different screens, and you don't lose the information that you've told it.
Dale, we do have a question in the chat. Is anyone QCing the uploaded pictures to ensure the pictures do not conflict with the diagram?
Yes, that will be the test folks at ASFPM. Yes, that's part of the breaking process. Now, all the pictures so far that are in here are straight from the FEMA publications or from the GAFM Region 4 guidance, guide document. But yeah, I am positive that there will be some pictures somebody comes in and says, wait, I don't think this is a diagram 3, this is a 1B. And so having this information out there has been part of this wrestling process. And with Brandon Matroni, who's the web developer, him being an uneducated user, I mean, he doesn't know the EC at all. He's learning the hard way. His fresh pair of eyes is helping flush out a lot of this stuff as well. Because he's like, well, you told me this doesn't make sense. Why, so he's forcing that hard conversation as well. But that's what I'm counting on at the ASFPM conference. And I'm going to say this as humbly as I can. I've been teaching this class for a dozen years, and I help FEMA rewrite the EC, and I see a lot of the nuances. Most of the information I'm putting in here has been vetted for a decade already. And so while there will be gaps in it, it's probably unlikely that a picture we put in here for a diagram 7 is actually, a diagram 9. There will be mistakes made, or there's gaps, or nuances here. But yeah, I basically had a decade-long testing crew on this app, just because of the material that is in the training class I've taught, and wrestling through this information with the ASFPM EC task force, redoing the FEMA EC. So yes, a lot of this information has been vetted, just not as part of this process. If that makes Tom feel any better.
We'll hope so. We'll hope so.
We'll hope so. And if it doesn't, he will let me know.
And I was thinking more of the post after we publicized it, and then a year from now somebody uploads a picture.
Oh, okay. So pictures people upload don't go in the photo gallery. That's a very good nuance, Tom. The photo galleries pictures can only be added to that by us. And as people upload their own picture and they add it to their printout, that picture they uploaded is not saved to any database whatsoever. Now, we are going to have a way. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, very good point. No, users can't go in and say, like, here's a diagram 6, and you're like, no, it's not. But we are going to have a feedback tool that allows people to, send comments and upload pictures. Because what I would love to do is have people upload random pictures that they give us permission to use for the nuances. Like I taught this class yesterday. I taught my EC workshop yesterday for North Dakota, and somebody asked about a grain bin. What an open bottom grain bin? What diagram number would that be? What's a diagram 5? Because it's elevated up on the posts, but it's a weird one. And so I would love those kind of weird buildings, pictures of those, to be in this tool eventually. And the best way to do that is crowdsource. But of course, I'm talking to my web developer, and he's like, well, I don't know if we want to do that, because where do we store these 1,000 pictures that random people upload. That's a lot of data. So we're going back and forth between me saying, well, it's not a big deal. And he's like, yeah, actually it is. So, and then who's in charge of QCing that information? Who's in charge of vetting it, answering questions? So there's a lot more complications with this stuff than I think. And I say all the time, I keep trying to design a Porsche, and Brandon's like, no, this is a Corolla. I need you to calm down a little bit, Dale. We're not making a Bugatti here. You know.
Yeah, that would be fun, but no. I don't think they gave us enough money to make a Bugatti out of this one.
Exactly.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dill. I do appreciate that webinar. It has been very informative. I hope everyone else has enjoyed the presentation as much as I have. We'll keep the chat open for a few more minutes so you can still submit questions. Please be sure to include your email address along with the question so that we may follow up with you. Please mark July 8th from 12 to 1 p.m. on your calendar for our next Lunch and Learn webinar to listen to Matt Buddy discuss Flood Insurance 101, what flood administrators need to know. Please make note
there we go.
Thank you. Please make note of the registration link for the next webinar and survey link in the chat and on the screen. Again, we greatly appreciate you completing the survey so that we may improve these webinars in the future. We are offering 1 hour of continuing education credit for today's session, available to certified floodplain managers that completed the polling questions and provide their name and email in the chat now. A copy of the presentation will be emailed to all attendees. If you're requesting continuing education credits, those credits will be emailed to you separately. Once again, our next Lunch and Learn is scheduled for July 8th, so be on the lookout for that invitation. With that, thank you again for attending today's event. For those who don't have any other questions, this does end our Lunch and Learn webinar. Have a great day, everybody. And thank you again, Del.
Yep. Thank y'all for having me. I'll stick around if there's any other random questions people want to ask.
I was just thinking during the trial and error part of it, I wonder if we can get feedback on primary terms or words like slab or, you know, something that would need a definition that could, you know, that could toggle either way, that if you answer it wrong, you might be thinking a slab, but somebody might just thinking, oh, well, it's just a garage. Or, yeah, I don't know what exactly would be, but what would be some key terms that would definitely need to have definitions for that specific request?
Yeah, and that's something Brandon has mentioned too. He wants a library where you hover over words and maybe there's an I symbol, you know, the information circle that you can float over it and it pops up something like that. Because he's been good about having a web developer. You know, his wife Nicole Maturoni was on the ASFPM board with me. She's been in floodplain management with me for 25 years. So he knows enough flood words to be dangerous, but a lot of this stuff is new, and he's like, well, you know, you're saying these words, the normal person doesn't know what that is. So Tom, I think that's going to be it's part of our goal to have that information, and I think the ASFPM Foundation or the conference would be a great spot to gather that information, with reason. You know, sometimes you have people who want you to define, well, you know, what does flood mean, or you know, what does wet mean? Well, I don't know. You know,
right.
Versus slab versus basement.
Yep. So that's good. Good. Well, that was a great presentation. I'm excited, and hopefully we'll get it quickly and use it. Finally.
Yep. Finally. as he pokes me.
No, not poking the bear. Not poking the bear, just saying.
Oh, I'm poking.
Yeah. No shame in that game. And I tell people in my EC workshops, I am ready for this to be off my plate. Absolutely. And I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a really good tool. And I mean, this is a 15-year brainchild. I think
Yeah.
FEMA Region 4 pulled together their original document. Gosh, well, before I started my own company, and I've been on my own for 12 years, and it was way before that when this thing started. So was it
Yep.
Susan Wilson and her team who originally had this idea, and Collis?
It started, yeah. I'm looking at mine. I said March of 2017 was, but it's been prior to that. we've
Oh
been
yeah,
working on
no,
it,
way before that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely Susan Wilson and Janice Mitchell.
Oh wow, yeah, you're right. Janice was part of this originally. Now we're going back in the day. I hadn't thought about Janice in a while.
I hope she's doing well.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is closing in on the 1 o'clock hour.
Yes, it is. Thank you
Thanks,
again,
y'all.
everyone. And
Thank you.
I think we're going to end it now, right, Aaron?